Psychology with Mary Crocker Cook.
Thank you for returning to Bay Area Psychology. Tonight, we turn our attention to addiction and ask the question, how will I know when I have crossed that line? One of the first problems people face when answering this question is a tendency to reflect our stereotypes. One of the more memorable portrayals of the downward spiral of alcoholism was given to us by Ray Milland in The Lost Weekend.
That was the last time. 2 bottles of rye.
What brand?
You know what brand, Mr. Brophy, the cheapest. None of that 12-year-old aged in the wood shishi, not for me. Liquor's all one anyway.
You want a bag?
Yes, I want a bag.
It's easy to watch Milland's desperate performance, particularly as the movie progresses, and think to ourselves, so I like to have a drink. I'm not as bad as him. But over the last few years, we've seen a noticeable shift nationwide towards more severe legal and social sanctions against addiction. And with those sanctions comes an increase in people identifying themselves as addicts of one kind or another. And I have to wonder if there really are more addicts. What is the definition of addiction? Tonight with us to answer this question is Dr. Mark Stanford, Executive Director of the National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Addiction in Santa Clara County, and Paula Edmonds, also from the National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Addiction. And I have to ask you both, I mean, what's your opinion about why people are increasingly labeling themselves as an addict of one kind or another?
Well, I think you're right, Mary. I think more information is being revealed to the general public about the recent discoveries of what is addiction and what are the causes to promote addiction. And people are becoming more and more aware of that. And in awareness, there's some time for self-reflection and hopefully some little life adjustments to take precautionary measures. It kind of reminds me of the information and awareness increase we did with coronary heart disease and people understanding risk factors that would increase their liability for heart disease, and then taking the necessary steps to reduce that risk through lifestyle changes.
Okay, so in some ways, though, something that used to be quite a stereotype or used to be a real stigma, you know, I'm an addict, when we read the entertainment magazines and we turn on Oprah, it seems almost one of the criticisms is that everybody's gotten on the addiction bandwagon. And I think one of the things we're going to do tonight is to sort it out and say, you know, when we talk about addiction, what are we really talking about? Okay, Paula, I know you do intakes at the camp, which is a local treatment center. When people come in, how do they get there? Are they willing to come in? Do they immediately say, hi, I'm an addict, sign me up? How does that work?
I wish it were that easy. Well, people come for a variety of reasons. Some of them are because their lovely wives have given them an ultimatum, or their employer has noticed that their job is lacking or what have you. They suspect that there might be some type of abuse coming to the workplace, and so they might say, you know, either you get some help or some treatment or you lose your job. And so I think that the majority of the people that I've found are coming for other people. Okay. There's a small percentage of people that come for themselves, I'm finding.
Okay, so even though maybe the impression we have when we look at our media is that people are increasingly identifying themselves maybe in reality, what we see at our local level is people still are having a reluctance to seek treatment and maybe make a few lifestyle changes, but to actually say, I'm ready to do something about that might not be as common as we might think. Okay? Well, in terms of overdiagnosing or diagnosing ourselves, when people use the word addiction or they talk about alcoholism, what are some of the kind of common myths or beliefs people have?
Well, let's see, some of the common ones I heard over the years were that that addiction is exclusively a genetic thing that you get from bad genes, alcoholic grandparents and what have you. Another myth I've heard is that addiction is more prevalent in low-income ethnic minority communities.
Okay.
And the third area I hear most often is that people equate obsessive behaviors with addictive disorders.
Okay. And so then we have what's called addictive personality types.
Right.
I know there's been literature written about that. And
Whatever that is.
yeah, whatever that is. It's like all of us.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we live in a culture that really definitely supports finding biological reasons for things, because then we could take a pill, or perhaps finding if it's something that is has a quick fix ability, like maybe if I just change my lifestyle a little, it'll be better. I think that's pretty normal for this culture. Huh?
That's true.
Exactly. If you don't, our culture, as you know, Mary, has a myriad of ways to tell the citizenry that if you don't like the way you feel, take something to change the way you feel.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's kind of that pain is bad. I mean, that kind of belief that it's not okay to be uncomfortable in any way, that if you're really happy, you're happy all the time. And if you don't like your marriage, leave.
Mm-hmm.
That sort of thing. That's another one? Okay. Okay. Well, when we start to talk about addiction and what it really might be, one of the things I decided to do was turn to the manual for diagnostics, the DSM-4, and I thought what we'd do is take a look at at least the official diagnostic criteria for addiction. And I know we have a graphic that has been prepared, and I thought we'd take a look at that. Well, the first diagnostic criteria seems to be tolerance, a need an increased amount of substance to feel the same high. Could either one of you comment on that? What does tolerance look like?
Tolerance means simply what it says, that you have to increase your dose level to achieve a desired effect. And tolerance, the time it takes for a drug to produce tolerance on the body and the brain, varies among different drugs. So for an example, the type of drug and the way the drug is ingested would determine the rate of tolerance, i.e. smoking cocaine, crack cocaine, produces tolerance almost instantaneously, versus alcohol is a tolerance-producing drug but takes a longer period of time. But all the drugs, regardless of their tempo of producing tolerance, all equate to mean you have to increase your dose level to achieve its desired effect. And the desired effect is one of two things, to experience pleasure or euphoria, or to avoid the pain of withdrawal.
Yeah. Yeah, when people reach a certain level of addiction, then you are no longer taking the drug for a feeling, but to avoid negative feelings, just to sort of maintain.
It turns into a negative reinforcer.
Right,
Yeah.
so then we talk about maintenance drinkers, maintenance users. Huh. What's the next one? I think we looked at withdrawal, didn't we? Experiencing the withdrawal symptoms of the substance used when you stop. Let's take that one first. That's kind of broad.
Now that's an interesting one, Mary. There's a thing in the field of pharmacology called the pharmacologic irony of drugs. And medications actually will produce the symptoms that you're trying to avoid. So for an example, uppers will ultimately create sleeping a lot, severe hunger, because uppers, as you know, are anorexiants.
Yeah.
But ultimately they create hyperexia. You're eating everything that's not nailed down. Some of the early withdrawal syndromes of cocainism, as you know. Alcohol will, as a sedative, will ultimately cause and create insomnia and agitation and seizures. So the irony here is that, and you do experience them in withdrawal syndrome, the effects of the drug after tolerance has set in actually produce the symptoms that the person's trying to avoid.
let's take a look for a moment back to Ray Milland and see how he experienced these withdrawal symptoms.
Let me have one, Nat. I'm dying. Just one.
I thought you was home writing that book.
They're playing a trick on me, a dirty trick, Nat. Give me one. I'll pay you when I can, only just don't let me die.
No credit, and you know it.
All right, it's charity. I'm begging you. Give me one, Nat.
Yeah, one. One's too many, and 100's not enough.
Okay, what's happening there? What did you see?
Well, Ray Milland is, or whoever's character name is, it's not Ray Milland.
No, that's not.
Ray Milland is
Let's
not
correct that. That is not Ray Milland. Let's clear that up.
You'll hear from his manager soon. No, the character he's portraying is experiencing alcohol withdrawal syndrome, and he wants to avoid the pain or dysphoria of alcohol withdrawal by ingesting more alcohol, to stand off, to medicate the impending withdrawal syndrome.
So that's where we get folk remedies like hair of the dog.
Exactly.
And in fact, isn't it true that in early treatment centers, that was how they did detox?
Yes.
Detoxification was they used alcohol and in limited amounts, and then to help
Exactly.
people.
When your system starts to develop a tolerance to a drug, and you want to detox them and medically off the drug, you can use any drug that is cross-tolerant. So, for example, alcohol is cross-tolerant with barbiturates and benzodiazepines like Valium and Xanax and Tegretol. And so you could use alcohol, but you get in trouble with your peers and your professional group. But you use a cross-tolerant drug like a barbiturate, which is considered a solid alcohol.
Okay.
Because the system responds to it almost the same. Then you gradually taper them off.
And that has its own controversy.
Yeah.
Which is throughout the treatment field, we still have a definite rule of thought that using a cross-tolerant kind of medication continues the addiction for people.
Well, different schools of thought. My professional opinion is that with people who have tissue dependency and have created tolerance, and there is an impending withdrawal syndrome when they stop their depressant drug use, they have to be medically detoxed because they're great risk for seizure.
We'll talk more about seizures when we return from our break. And before that, we'll hear some thoughts on when do we cross the line into addiction. Stay with us.